Logical theories of morality, agents cannot make certain wrongful choices even if by doing so the number of those exact kind of wrongful choices can be minimized. So there are wrongful choices. Suppose if I break a promise, suppose I do something wrong, in order to show, in order to exemplify that this act is wrong. Suppose I hurt you or I do you some kind of harm in order to show that doing harm is not a right thing to do. But even if I am doing this to minimize the amount of harm, still my action is not permitted on any deontological view. There are actions which are clearly forbidden. You can't do them. Now, what makes a choice right is its conformity with a moral norm. Now, naturally, questions arise. How are these moral norms or moral laws arrived at? How can we arrive at these moral laws? I shall try to answer this question by saying one or two words on Kant, which I am very much tempted to do. Still, I will first give a general account of the deontological theories first. I am not sure how much time is left, sir.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Good. Then I am running out of time. Now, certain actions can be right even though not maximizing of good consequences. For rightness of such actions consists in their instantiating certain norms. So there are actions which do not, on any deontological theory, which do not maximize, which do not or may not maximize any good. Still, they may instantiate the moral law, and so they may be a right action. Those actions may be right actions. Such actions are permitted. Not only in a weak sense that there is no obligation not to do them, but also in the strong sense that one is permitted to do them even though they are productive of less good consequences than their alternatives. Now, there are many kinds of deontological theories. There are agent-centered deontological theories and there are patient-centered deontological theories. Now, the agent-centered and the agent-centered theories and the agent-relative reasons on which they are based not only enjoin or command each of us to do or not to do certain things, they also instruct us to treat my friends in certain special ways, even though by neglecting them I could do more for the society or for the country. So, at the heart of these agent-centered theories is the idea of agency. Here, morality is intensely personal. On any agent-centered deontological theory, deontological view, morality is intensely personal. Each of us is enjoined to keep our moral house in order. These agent-centered theories may emphasize on the role of intention or other mental states in constituting moral agency. They may emphasize on the actions themselves, and they may hold that the actions constitute moral agency. The actions are to be judged morally. They may hold that intentions or other mental states are to be judged morally. Or they may hold that both intentions and actions are to be judged morally. Now, on any of these views, risking or causing of some evil result is distinct from any intention to achieve it. Now, those who place their emphasis on intention or other moral or on other mental states, on their view, it is intending alone that marks the involvement of our agency. Now, there are other versions who focus on intended ends. There are other theories which emphasize on deliberative processes that precede the formation of intentions, so that even to contemplate the doing of an evil act invokes our agency and may be morally bad. The act view of agency is distinct from the mental state or intentions view of agency. And we all know that philosophy of law of any state is predominantly based on the act view of moral agency. Usually, a person is not legally punishable for his intentions alone. But if he performs an action which is caused by intention, or it can be shown to be intentional, then only it is legally punishable. Now, the willing must cause the action, or the willing must cause, suppose, the death of an innocent in order to be an intentional act of killing. So, not only the act view places its emphasis on the action, but the action must be caused by an intention. Whenever moral agency is placed in an action, the action must also be an intentional action. Okay. Now, these agent-centered deontological theories can be contrasted with the patient-centered deontological theories. I shall not speak much upon the patient-centered deontological theories because I do not have time to do so. Here, on both these theories, causing of evils are distinguishable from omissions to prevent such evils. So causing of evils are not the same as omissions. So there is a distinction between causing and allowing. We must remember that the Catholics also placed a lot of emphasis on this distinction between causing and allowing. Now, also one is said not to cause an evil such as a death when one's acts merely enable some other agent to cause such evil. So there is a distinction between causing and enabling also. So these distinctions between doing and allowing is a very important distinction. We can contrast patient-centered deontological theories with these agent-centered theories. Now, the patient-centered deontological theories are often right-based rather than being duty-based. Now, I am tempted to say at least a few words on Kant. Kant starts his groundwork of the metaphysics of morals by first specifying that what is the unconditioned condition of all good things. He has classified all good things into first into two kinds, gifts of nature and gifts of fortune. Gifts of fortune are things like honor, health, etc. Then he recognized two subclasses within the gifts of nature, the mental talents and the qualities of temperament. He proceeded to show that none of these good things, please note that Kant never said that there is only one good thing on earth. That is not Kant's statement. Kant recognizes that there are plenty of good things, and he classifies them into two broad types. the gifts of nature and the gifts of fortune. The gifts of nature are then again classified into qualities of temperament and mental talents. Mental talents such as intelligence, courage, etc. Qualities of temperament such as self-control, moderation in affections and passions, and so on. But Kant noted that none of these good things, that is the gifts of nature and the gifts of fortune, none of these good things is good if they are accompanied by a good will. Kant noted that three qualities of temperament which the early Stoic philosophers, they recognized as good in themselves. What were they? They were self-control, moderation in affections and passions. Even these good things, if they are manipulated, they are employed by a bad will, then they will produce more harm than good. So, if a bad man has self-control, he will be a greater evil than a bad man who has less self-control. So, none of these good things are good in themselves. They are good only when they are determined, they are controlled by a good will. Next, in the next section, Kant showed that this good will is intrinsically good. How did Kant show that? Kant showed that by arguing that a good will is not deprived of its goodness if it leads to evil consequences. And the goodness of a good will doesn't increase if it produces good consequence. And even if it does not produce either good or evil consequences, nothing can take away the goodness of a good will. So a good will is intrinsically good. So an action done out of goodwill is the only good thing on earth. Next, Kant proceeds to define duty, an action done out of the motive of duty. Then he shows that only when an action, he shows the relation between goodwill and duty in the fourth section, as the sections have been classified by Peyton. He also clarifies the relation between goodwill and duty, and then he proceeds to analyze the imperatives into two types, classifies the imperatives into hypothetical ones and categorical ones, and he mentions that a categorical imperative is only a negative touchstone. It is not the moral law. It is only, he expressly states that the categorical imperative is only a negative touchstone, which shows that which of our actions are not moral, are immoral. Now, the Indian theories were mostly consequential because the Indian philosophers, they subscribe to the view that any person, not even a person, any sentient creature acts to bring about either of two ends. These two ends were specified by Udayanacharya as Sukha Prapti, or that is attainment of some happiness, and Dukkha Pariharo, or cessation of suffering. Traditionally, the Purusharthas, Purushartha was defined by the Indian philosophers, by the classical Indian philosophers, as Yena Prajukta Purusha Pravartate Sa Purushartha. It is that artha which motivates a person to act in a certain manner. Yena Prajukta Purusha Pravartate Sa Purushartha. And these Purusharthas were classified, as we all know, into four types: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Now, it's a very common question that why are dharma and artha mentioned before kama and moksha? Why are kama and moksha blocked together, clubbed together? That is because kama and moksha are ends in themselves. they are the mukhya purusharthas, whereas dharma and artha are the gauna purusharthas. They are the means to bring about certain ends. Now, what is kama? Kama is very simply defined in the Bono Parva of Mahabharata. This definition is in the mouth of Bhim, that Vishayendriya Sarnikasya Janya Sukha Vishesha Kama. So it is that sensual pleasure which is produced by sense-object contact. The kind of pleasure that we have by eating some delicious dish is kama. That is a typical example of kama. There were two major views regarding the nature of moksha, Ananda Mokshvada and Abhava Mokshvada. The Abhava Mokshvadins were greater in number, the Nyaya, Vaisheshika, the Shankha, the Yoga, the Mimamsa, even the Mimamsa, and the Hinojana Buddhists, they were all Abhava Mokshvadins. The most classical statement of Abhava Mokshvada can be found in the Nyaya aphorisms, in the Nyaya Sutra, Tad Atyanto Vimaksho Apavargo. Here the pronoun Tad refers to the earlier aphorism Dukkha. So, Apavargo is nothing but Dukkhasya Atyanto Vimaksho. Tad Atyanto Vimaksho Apavargo. And Nyaya Bhashyakar Vatsayana, he refuted in detail the view that Apavargo is manifestation of eternal bliss, Nitya Sukhasya Abhivekti. This view, which was the view of Bhasamoggo or some other ancient Nayayikas, was very clearly and at length refuted by Vatsayana in his Nyaya Bhashya. The other view prevalent among the classical Indian philosophers regarding the nature of moksha was Ananda Mokshvada. Of course, all the Vedantis, not only the Advaita Vedantis, all the Vedantis, the Jaina philosophers, and also some of the Mahayana Buddhists, they subscribe to the view that moksha or liberation is not merely the cessation of all sufferings, but it is also attainment of the highest bliss. Now, so this is the highest good recognized by the Indian philosophers, liberation. And kama is only the world, kama is a term that covers only the worldly goods. And the worldly goods not merely include the earthly goods, also the other earthly, the heavenly pleasures also, they are also brought under the notion of kama. Now there was only one Indian system which recognized Swarga or heavenly pleasure to be the highest good of human life. That was the school of the Karmavadi Mimamsakas. Please remember that Kumarila Bhattu and also the Brahmapada Mimamsakas, they admitted liberation or moksha to be the highest good of human life, not Swarga. Swarga was admitted to be the highest good of human life only by the Karmavadi Mimamsakas, to whose views we find reference in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Yam imam pushpitang vacham prabodantyo vipashtito veda vadarata partho nanyadasti iti vadino kamatmano swarga para janma karma phalotadam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishariya gatim prati bhogaishariya prasaktanam taya pavita chetasam bhavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. These are the three verses of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita which refer to the view of the Karmavadi Mimamsakas. Now a dharma is an action, is a righteous action which purpose to bring about this good. Now how was dharma defined by the Indian philosophers? Artha is prasiddha dhana sampatti. Artha is just the common riches. Now dharma, we come across many definitions of dharma in the Mimamsa literature. Dharma was defined by Kumarila Bhattu as Balavad Anishtan Ananubandhi ishto sadhanatvam dharmatvam. That is, dharma is an ishto sadhana. It is the sadhana or the means to bring about some ishto, some good. But they do not simply stop at defining dharma in terms of the property ishto sadhanatva. Dharma is not merely an ishto sadhana. It must not be related to any anishto, to any evil which is greater than the good which will be produced or which will be caused by the action. Now, why do they go for this roundabout way of defining the concept of dharma? Because the Indian philosophers recognize the fact that every action it produces some amount of pain. Why do they produce some amount of pain? Because karma always requires the expenditure, the spending of three things. This is very interesting. We can't perform any action without spending, without putting in our labor, without spending money, and without spending time. And people do not want to spend time, money, and labor. So, any action always causes some amount of pain. But the Indian philosophers enjoined or said that the amount of pain produced must not be greater than the amount of good produced. So we often find that a hedonistic, plain and simple hedonistic calculus is involved in this notion of dharma. Later, in the writings of later Mimamsakas, we come across other restricted definitions of dharma as well. Logakshi Bhaskara in his Arthasangraha defines dharma as Veda Pratipadya Prayojanabad Artha. So it should be a Veda Vihita action. It should be some action which is enjoined or prescribed by the scriptures, and it should be Prayojanaban. It must lead to some goal, right? So, the notion of dharma is plainly and clearly a consequentialist notion. An action is right if it leads to some good. That is the highest prayojana or the highest end of human life. So we find that these Indian theories are predominantly consequentialist in nature. We go back to my earlier question placed by me, are these theories very demanding, overly demanding? Yes, they are. We are reminded of the main prescription of the man who took Vedanta to the world. What was his contribution, main contribution of Swamiji to earlier Vedanta? The main there is a very clear link between a consequentialist theories being overly demanding and Swamiji's main contribution to Vedanta. There is a very clear link. That is, Swamiji introduced the concept of Seva Yoga, right? Apart from the three other yogas, the notions of which were known to the classical Indian philosophers. What were they? In fact, we come across all the yogas, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga in Srimad Bhagavad Gita itself. There were interpretations of Gita which speak of a synthesis of these three yogas. But we all know that the Advaita commentaries on Srimad Bhagavad Gita have shown very clearly that no synthesis among these three yogas is possible at all. Why? Because Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga are prescribed for two entirely different kinds of people, for two entirely different kinds of adhikari. One who is an adhikari to perform karma is not an adhikari to pursue the path of knowledge. This is very clearly stated in the verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Durena hi avaram karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya, buddhau sharanam anvichya, kripana phalavetav. So here it is clearly shown in this verse that the path of karma is abaro or nikrishto to the path of jnana. And even that is why, even after prescribing the path of knowledge, in the second chapter of Gita to Arjuna, Lord Krishna proceeds to describe the path of karma to Arjuna in the third chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Karma Yoga. And Arjuna himself asked the Lord that why are you motivating me in this work, to take part in this work, where I know that liberation can be attained only through the path of knowledge by Brahma Sakshatkara or Atma Jnana alone. The reason is Arjuna was not an adhikari to pursue the path of knowledge. In order to pursue the path of knowledge, one must require the sadhana chatushtayas. You all have heard of our students have all, I hope, heard of the sadhana chatushtayas. They are the nityanitya vastu viveko, ihamutra phalabhoga virago, shamadamadi shat sampatti, and mumukshutva, which is an intense desire for liberation. Unless one has all these characteristics, and unless one has uporati, which means vihitanam karmanam vidhina parityago, that is, unless one becomes a sannyasin, one is not primarily entitled to pursue the path of knowledge. And so Arjuna was not primarily entitled. He was not a mukha adhikari for pursuing the path of knowledge. That is why here no synthesis between the two yogas is possible on this view. Madhusudana has refuted in detail Jnana Karma Samukchaya Vada in his Guratha Deepika of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Madhusudana has shown that only when a person attains Chitta Shuddhi, when his mind is purified by performing Nishkama Karma, then only he becomes entitled to pursue the path of knowledge. Then only he becomes entitled to study Vedanta, and then only by studying Vedanta one can attain Atma Jnana, and that Atma Jnana alone can cause liberation. And when liberation is produced, all sanchita and anarabdha karmas will be destroyed. Since a person who is jiva-mukta, who has attained liberation in this life, will not perform any kamya karma or any wishful action in his life, so no further merit or demerit, papa and punya will be accumulated, and so only his prarabdha will go on giving fruits as long as he lives, because a prarabdha cannot be stopped from producing fruits unless they are not exhausted. Na bhuktam shkiyate karma kalpa koti shatairapi. So only the prarabdhas will go on, and as soon as the prarabdha karmas are exhausted, the person will attain, he will die, he will attain vidya-mukti. So this is the notion of Nishkama Karma, but Swamiji added to these three yogas the concept of Seva Yoga, that elevated the goal of Vedanta from being only a merely personal goal to a collective goal. Okay, so this Seva Yoga, this is a very, very demanding conception of the good. One has to devote one's entire life if one has to attain this end. There will be no room for personal benefits, for personal pleasures, even for one's family, even for one's neighborhood, but one has to devote one's entire life to bringing about the welfare of the entire mankind. Being an ascetic, one has to devote one's entire life to bringing about the common good, the good of the entire mankind. So we find the logical outcomes of a consequentialist metaphysics, a consequentialist ethics, culminating in Seva Yoga, in the notion of doing the good for the entire mankind. With this, I stop here.